Good morning, everyone. Amy Collins here from Bestseller Builders and Free Advice Friday. I am here with the powerhouse behind Write, Publish, Sell. And it's the name of your publishing house, Alexa Bigwarfe, is Kat
Biggie Press.
Kat Biggie Press. Kat Biggie Press, which is now working with a new author. I know that we've recently connected with Kim Calabrese. It's great to see you.
Yes.
And for all of you who are on, I think we've got a bunch of old timers here. A bunch of you know how to do this. Denise, Lynn, Stephen, I know you're here. But what we do is we sit for the next half an hour and we answer your questions. We answer them on the fly. We're very honest about what we don't know. We'll research and come back to you. But I would like to introduce Alexa Bigwarfe. Alexa and I met in Nashville last year at Digital Book World, which it's been a year now.
I know.
And she is the brains and the producer behind an amazing women's in publishing conference that I did with her. And Alexa, you're doing that again this year, correct?
Yes, and I hope you'll be speaking at it again.
I would love to. I would love to.
Wonderful.
But Alexa has so much knowledge about the publishing side of things that I don't, that I asked her if she'd like to come on and talk to you guys and help me answer your questions this week. She's got a lot of books that she publishes behind Kat Biggie Press. She is a fantastic editor, designer. She's got a whole team of people she works with under Write, Publish, Sell. And I wanted you guys to meet her because she's got tons of expertise that I don't. And a lot of your questions lately have been hovering around the publishing side of things. And I really appreciate you giving us this time this morning.
Well, you are so welcome. And I have to let you know that it is summertime and I have 3 kids in the house, so I will mute myself if there's something going on. But I heard my little one just come in. So thank you for
that is fine. It is all we are great. All right. So let's see. All right. We have questions already going. Plus, as always, I answer questions that were emailed to me over the week. I'm very, very glad to see you all here. The first question to come through is from Stephen. Stephen always has great questions, and he is asking, which factors do you consider when trying to price a book or an ebook? If you price it too high, people will look for something cheaper, too low, and you cannot discount, and people think it isn't any good because it's just 99 cents. He gives a bunch of answers, and he wants to know how to price an ebook and a print book appropriately. Now, I will give my answer, and then I'm going to ask Alexa to do the same. It's a great question, one that I actually have written a blog about at newshelves.com. But here's the short version of what I do. I borrow, emulate, steal blatantly from the greats. What I do is I go and take a look for paperback books. I'm not talking about ebooks, but for print books. I take a look at all the best-selling books that are happening in my genre right now. So, Stephen, for you would go to the Amazon bestseller lists and you'd ignore Kindle. You would just start with the paperback, and you'd go to the Amazon page, and you would. You know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to show you this while we work. You go to Amazon.com, and let's see. And I'm going to share my screen real quick with you guys because I want you to see what I'm seeing. I hope all of you in a moment can see Amazon.com.
Got it.
And what I want you to do, it's really, really easy. Stephen, I'm trying to remember the genre of your book. Stephen, go to the Q&A box, if you will, and remind me what I'm so sorry. I talk to a lot of people every week. But let's say, you can literally start by looking for, let's say you've written a thriller novel. So what I would do is I would look for, go to bestsellers for your category. I'm trying to see if Stephen has answered yet. Go to bestsellers for your category. And the most books sold, super easy. See how I'm doing this? Fiction. Let's see that your book is very, very much like What You Did by Carrie McGowan. So you just go to the paperback. Now you will see here that the paperback is $11.17, but that's not what the paperback is. The actual paperback of this absolutely best-selling suspense thriller novel is $15.95. It is $15.95. It is 282 pages. It is so, and if you're looking to find out what all of the best psychological fiction books are priced at, you simply click on the link, and it brings you to the best sellers. So let's say that Stephen had written a psychological fiction book, and $15.95 is the price of the number 1 selling book, and the paperback of the number 2 selling book is $14.95. And this one is 280 pages. Okay, Lake Union is an actual Amazon imprint, so that one's, that's a really good. There's a reason why it's $1 less. Let's take a look at a Greg Olson book. That's a good apples to apples comparison. You look at the paperback. Again, Amazon's selling it for $11.99, but it's $15.99. And this book is 396 pages. Okay, Thomas and Mercer, again, different imprint. So if you had written a psychological thriller, I would say that if your book was anywhere from 240 to 320 pages, $15.95 is the price I'd pick. Why? Because that's what all the bestsellers. Now, I'm doing this very fast, guys. I'm doing this short, and I'm doing it very, very quick. But that is the shortcut version of how I pick a price for my books. I do want to answer about ebooks, but I'm going to shut up and I'm going to ask Alexa how she comes up with prices for her books.
I do it exactly like what you just did. I see what's selling best, how they're pricing them. I look at obviously, I think the important thing, and the reason she pointed out the page numbers is because the print production is going to make a difference in the cost and sometimes how you price your book, because if it costs $12 to print your book, which I would hope it wouldn't, but if you're doing something with a lot of graphics or color or something like that, the print cost will be higher. So I do look and see what's going on in the industry, what the norm is for the genre. And then I also look at the cost of print, which sometimes you will know and sometimes you won't. But usually you can get what you need just by seeing what other people are pricing theirs, because the key is you don't want to be in a different price range than people that are bestsellers in your genre, because if you're too expensive, people won't buy it because they won't. And if you're not expensive enough, they wonder why.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the answer for ebooks is very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
I do not go to the bestsellers in ebooks to figure out how to price my ebook. So let me be very, very clear for those of you who are watching this on a replay. If you started this halfway through, we were only talking about paperback and hardcover books. That's how to do it. Ebooks are different. Ebooks, you go right to the source. I want you to go to Draft to Digital. I want you to follow Mark at Smashwords. I want you to read the studies as to what the best-selling books in your genre are priced at. Right now, July 2019, again, if you're listening to this on a replay, this is only for July 2019. The Book Industry Study Group, Smashwords, Draft to Digital, all the studies that have been done, they will tell you that a fiction, a novel written by a new author that does not have a huge following will do best at $4.99. Mm-hmm. Right now, a novel will do best at $4.99. That is the price point that, according to studies, people are willing to try a new author at $4.99. $5.99, $6.99, that gets a little pricey for them. And $2.99, $1.99, 99 cents, that is bargain basement discount time. You lower your price for temporary sales. But if I was a new author, it was my first book, and I was coming out with a novel, I'd be pricing my ebook at $4.99. Keep in mind that is a full-length novel. If you've written a novella, if you have a 22,000-word novella, then that doesn't count. If you've written a nonfiction book, it's a little bit of it's a different question. And if you are published by a major house, your ebook will be $11.99, $12.99, $14.99. But keep this in mind, guys. The major houses are all reporting in the New York Times and to everyone who will listen that ebooks are dying. That is not true. Ebooks are definitely softening in the major houses because they won a lawsuit against Amazon a few years ago. Amazon was capping their ebooks at $9.99. They won the lawsuit, the ability to price their books at what they wanted, and they started pricing their ebooks at $14.99 or higher sometimes. Well, you can get a paperback. You just saw for $11 on Amazon. Who would pay $14.99 for an ebook? People don't do that. So ebooks are not dying. What's happening is the major houses have shot themselves in the foot because they do not want ebooks to be sold for less than the paperback. And in some cases, they're being sold for more than the hardcover price. So they are softening in the major markets. But for mid-sized publishers, small publishers, savvy publishers who know how to price their ebook at $7.99 or below, ebooks are exploding. They are still a huge and a very viable platform in which to get your books out. So for a new author, I would say fiction, $4.99 is a great place to start for a real full-length novel. And for nonfiction, $5.99, $6.99. I would not go a penny above $7.99. Now that's my advice. Alexa, do you want to weigh in?
I follow the same advice, especially with first-time authors, because when you are a first-time author, as she just mentioned, you're looking at people trying to decide whether or not they should give you a chance. So are they going to spend, how much are they going to give you a chance on? I like to price books in about the $4.99 to $5.99 range, almost across the board, all genres, with the exception of true like workbooks and books where you're getting like basically coaching in a book. Because when I talk to my authors, I say, let's think about what the value is of what you're giving them. If you would charge them $3,000 for a coaching session with them, why would you charge them 99 cents to give them the same information, right? So we look at stuff like that. And then of course, there's the back and forth benefit of trying to get sales, trying to get reviews, trying to entice people to give you an opportunity as a new author, as trying you out. So, we will often run sales, run promos, get them down to 99 cents for the benefit of people who almost anybody will click 99 buy on a 99-cent book. Right. And sometimes that can be a great strategy if you get a lot of downloads because you get paid per pages read.
Yes.
Now through Kindle. So there is an advantage there. But generally speaking, if we are not discounting, I agree with you, anywhere between $3.99 and $6.99 is where we like to sit comfort wise, depending on length and what you're getting from the book.
Fantastic. I love when people agree with me. This is great. Let's just keep doing this. All right. Now, Jason is on Facebook Live asking, he's got 200 books left, and I'm assuming in his garage, and he didn't have a particularly well thought out marketing plan or book. He did a book launch, but nobody really showed up, and he wants to know if it's too late to start over and do a relaunch. No. It is not too late. But Jason, I want you to hop onto Facebook if you're listening, and I want you to tell me when this book came out. Because if these 200 books are 7 years old, that's one answer. So I want you to answer that. And meanwhile, I'm going to get to another question, but Jason, I'll get right back to you, hon. I promise. Sonia F., one of my weekly favorites, is saying that she'd like to do a weekly newsletter. I do a weekly newsletter and where I curate articles that I have found helpful over the week, and I send it out every week. Well, she subscribes to it, and she would like to do the same thing, and she wants to know what template or software I use to do that. So I'm going to share my screen again. Great question. Thank you, Sonia. Let's see, screen 2, share, and we're going to go. This is my newsletter. Can you see that, Alexa? It says New Shelves News. This comes out every week, and guys, I use a piece of software called Paperly. It is an online system. It is super easy to go to paperly.com. You just paper.li. That's it. Paperly is what's it called. And you can create a newsletter very easily. They lay it out for you. These are ads that I have down the side. My Twitter feed is on my newsletter. And when I want to, watch this, guys, I love this, I can export it. I can create a new one anytime I want, but I can export my paper to my MailChimp. I use MailChimp, but there's other companies you can use. MailChimp's getting a little weird lately. And I can export my newsletter to MailChimp in a heartbeat. Did you see how many clicks that was? Done. Yeah. Already done. And then I can mail it out to people once a week, which is what I do on Wednesdays. Mm-hmm. So Sonia, I use paper.ly, Paperly it's called. That's just the one I use. It's completely up to you. I don't have a lot of experience with other ones. Alexa, do you do a newsletter? Do you want to tell people about it? Is there software you use?
I do a newsletter, and now I'm looking at what you're doing and thinking to myself, oh my gosh, we spend way too much time writing our newsletter. We actually create, my assistant and I look through some of the best news that's going on, whatever's happening, and we actually write a newsletter each week and include links to articles that we have found. I like what you're doing, and actually I noticed what you were doing, and I checked out Paperly, and I haven't gotten much farther than that, but I think I'm going to start using that.
I want to show you guys one more thing that Paperly has. Now, I don't get anything for recommending Paperly. May I be very clear about that?
Right.
I sent a client to Alexa last week. I don't get anything for that either. I do not take kickbacks. That's not how I work. So when I recommend something, it's because I truly love them. Do you guys see my screen right now, Jane Friedman's latest blog?
Mm-hmm.
All right. This was written by Penny Sansevieri. Adore her. Adore Jane. A short and sweet beginner's guide to securing Amazon reviews. Well, things on Amazon are changing. So what I do is, let's say I read this blog. Now, I'm not going to share this yet because for this reason, I do not share anything I don't read all the way through.
Good
Because what if Penny, who is brilliant, so it wouldn't be her, but what if somebody else had written this blog and got like really coked up halfway through the article and started writing horrible things? So I read all the way through. Like for instance, this says, first approach people you know. That's not actually great advice. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So, all right, not a big fan of that advice because you're not allowed to do that anymore on Amazon. But let's say there's another blog here, Key Book Publishing Paths. Now, I have read this all the way through. All you have to do is go up to this little Chrome thing. It says Paperly. You click on it. Watch this. You select New Shelves News. I add it to the character, what you need to know, and I hit Add to Paper. When I click on this button, watch this, bam, added to New Shelves News. That's it. So every Wednesday when I mail this out, the paper's already built. It's already done. Yeah. Because as I find articles I like, I just build as I go.
That's fantastic.
All right, let's go back to Facebook and see if, apparently I did share that. I shared that with everyone. Isn't that lovely? Let's see. Jason is saying the book came out in April of this year.
Oh, perfect.
Jason, you have plenty of time. You know what I would do? I would say that you did a soft launch in April. It wasn't actually the launch of your book. And I would plan out a trade launch. Trade to the trade industry. The book trade is the short term. And so plan a September launch for your book and say that April was the soft launch. That way you're not telling anyone stuff they don't need to know. It doesn't matter that your first launch didn't go well. That was just the soft launch. You're going to do it differently this time. The trade launch is in September. And you start building your blogger list and writing articles. You build an online blog tour. You plan an ebook discount promotion. You pitch your book for reviewers between now and September and try and get your reviews up. You get everything building. Now, how to create a proper marketing launch, that is a 3-hour class. Actually,
right.
It's a 3-hour class that I'm teaching in New York City. For those of you who want to join me in New York City, the third week in April, I'm teaching an entire day's worth of class of marketing and business advice for Writer's Digest for their annual conference. So join me there.
Cool.
But Jason, how to do it is a whole nother question, but it is not too late. If you were my client, we'd be building everything up to September 20th, and you've got plenty of time. What you did was a soft launch. It didn't go well, no problem. You've got a great do-over. If your book was 3 years old, I would have a different answer, but that's how we go. Yeah. All right, I'm going to let Alexa answer the next couple questions because I am so used to talking. I'm not letting the poor woman get a word in edgewise.
So I agree. Great advice, Amy.
Stephen is asking, which blogs and websites do you follow, Alexa? Do you recommend to help market books, or just publishing hacks, best practical advice for authors and for self-published authors, both traditional and self-published?
Oh, that is a really difficult question to answer because it's so dependent on genre. Some of them are very, very common places. I mean, all of my publishing advice, I start with the Independent Book Publishers Association, IBPA, when I'm going for information on publishing standards, on how to make my book look right, on how to price, all of those kinds of things, how to get distribution, all of those kinds of things. If you're an author, entrepreneur, you can go there. Same with the Alliance of Independent Authors. And also Ingram Spark has started coming out with a whole line of publishing, a free publishing course, information on marketing, information on all those kinds of things. And then you have, well, I go to Amy's website quite a bit actually, because she has.
Okay, guys, do not believe her. She is totally making that up.
I totally do. I always know to get the latest and greatest information in the industry. Amy's gonna have it. I'm really just as a writer, I'm a huge fan of Jane Friedman, of Joanna Penn, of
Ally, ALLI.
Ally, yep, the Alliance of Independent Authors,
Yeah.
of and those types of places. So you were asking about marketing, if there's a specific marketing. There is an organization, a company called LitRing, LITRING.
Oh, I don't know them.
Yeah, it's run by a woman named Melissa Storm. I met her years ago. She started a company called Novel Publicity, and they do online book blog tours for authors. So they create these amazing, incredible blog tours where they'll send you a paperback version of the book and all the stuff you need to know to help promote the book. So she started that company. And then since then, she's created like 5 more companies, and LitRing is one of them. And she's super smart about how to market your book, especially as an indie author, as a first-time author. She has all kinds of content and inexpensive ways for you to run promos if you want to try your hat at some paid promos. People have their ups and downs on whether or not they should invest in paid promos, but there's a time and a place, and I've gotten some great traction from some.
Oh, us too. We always, you have to pay the promo now. You have to. That has to be in your budget. Otherwise, no one sees you. You're literally hidden if you don't pay to be seen.
Absolutely. And then Kindlepreneur, Kindle Rocket, Kindle Publisher, it is now, with Dave Chesson. Dave is probably one of my favorite people on the face of the planet. And he's got such great knowledge when it comes to doing well and performing well on Amazon with your Kindle books.
I adore him as well. Yeah.
So, I mean, I could give you a list a mile. There's so much great stuff out there.
The bookdesigner.com has a lot of great
How could I forget
Joel Friedlander and AME, Author Marketing Experts.
Oh, I don't know them.
Oh, AME. Well, I didn't know LitRing, so I love them. So there's a couple things you need to do. You do need to join Ally, ALLI. Yes. You need to join them for this reason. They have a watchdog list.
Yes.
And you will be able to find out a list of trusted sites and a list of questionable sites by going to Ally. It's one of the best resources out there for vetting sites, for making sure that you're not being taken advantage of, for making sure that you're in good shape. But then after you go there, these sites that Alexa and I are talking about. Now, I have a site on my website. I have a page on my website, newshelves.com. And if you go to newshelves.com, you'll see a tab that says People We Like. It's newshelves.com, and just hover over it. It says Questions for Amy, and you'll see People We Like. And it is a long list of resources that I use, including Ingram Sparks. I love the Ingram Spark thing. So any Jane Friedman is there. The book design.
Have I made your list yet?
We're going to put you on. But Alexa is not there, but only because I'm kind of lazy and I don't update it as often as I should. But for anyone looking for a trusted list, those are the people that I follow. But the people we just mentioned make sense.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So Jean is saying that her book was 2 years old in April, and she wants to know if she can relaunch it this fall as well. Would you like to give that a stab, or shall I? It's up to you, hon.
Jean, are you still on on board with us here. Can you tell us a little bit more about your book, like the genre of it? If it's a fiction book, I'm going to let Amy answer that. But from a nonfiction perspective, I think you can relaunch and relaunch and relaunch and relaunch and relaunch depending on the topic of it. For example, my first book was a book for grieving parents. It's called Sunshine After the Storm, a survival guide for grieving parents. I basically do another relaunch of that book every October during Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. I've just learned that July is Bereaved Parents Month, and I wish I'd known that before because I would have done another little relaunch. But I would say with that caveat, if you're going to be relaunching it and still putting it out there as new, make sure that on the nonfiction side, you have updated any information that may be out of date. For example, it's been 5 years now. No, it's been 6 years. Oh, we missed the 5-year mark. It's been 6 years since we published that book. So I should have done a 5-year like update, relaunch, all of those kinds of things. But I mean, this is kind of, in my opinion, this is the beauty of indie publishing, is that if you can find if there's something happening in the news cycle, for example, that's really relevant to your book. If you wrote a book, for example, that was on a kind of Me Too type topic in 5 years ago, and now Me Too and all of this stuff is coming out and becoming a big issue, you can relaunch to get in with all of that. You know, there's a time and a place. Fiction, I don't know so much about. I focus mostly on nonfiction. What's your perspective on that? And I'd like to know if you differ in opinion on the nonfiction.
I do not differ in the opinion on the nonfiction. My rule of thumb for nonfiction is that if you want to launch for the first time into the bookstore or library market, then you need to do a second edition once your book is 3 years old.
Okay.
If you don't care about bookstores and libraries, then you're good for 7 years. That is my experience, because I worked for many years for traditional publishers. And the rule of thumb still today hasn't changed all that much. Bookstores and libraries, especially the wholesalers that service the bookstores and libraries, they have to have a line in the sand where they say, we can't consider a book because there's too many books to consider. With millions of books coming out every year, they have to say, okay, enough's enough. So 2 years is the rule of thumb, and that's the outside. If bookstores and libraries are your focus. If they're not, if online is your focus, you have up to 7 years. But a second edition for nonfiction is a great idea. Fiction is a little trickier. You've got about a year. You have about a year for fiction to truly launch into the bookstore, library, and trade market. After that, you've got a couple years online. I would say 3 years online before your book starts to look dated. Here's the exception. If your book is successful, it is for instance, I know Alexa's book is very successful. She can go for 10 years because she has tons of reviews. She's got tons of sales. She's got lots of online traction. I promise you, Dan Brown is not re-releasing the Da Vinci Code, which is 20 years old now. I mean, we're good. It still sells. So if you've been very successful and you've got momentum, you don't want to mess with that. But if you never lifted off, if you never actually broke through the atmosphere and got into orbit, if you're still being held down by gravity, for fiction, about 3 years is when you should do another edition. That is my experience.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Well, and then you get the benefit too of, sorry to just go on here, but you get the benefit of when you assign a new ISBN, it gets back out into the world again through Bowker, and all kinds of benefits to come along with it that'll, put it in front of people who may not have noticed it 3 years ago.
If you decide to do a new edition of your book and you want to carry over reviews from the first edition, be very clear. I want to be very clear. I'm looking you guys right in the camera. The title and the subtitle and the author name cannot change. I want to be very clear. Those reviews in books in print and on Amazon and everywhere else, if you decide to just fudge the subtitle a bit or put literally something as simple as putting a colon in to your title, will in many cases mean that those reviews will not port over to the new edition. So spend a lot of time on your title and subtitle because you're going to be living with it for a very long time. That is not something to rush.
Good point.
All right. All right. Let's get to some other questions. I absolutely adore that my mother just wished me a good morning on Facebook Live. So
Oh.
Alexa, say hi to my mom.
Hi, Amy's mom.
Stephen is asking about an online tracker that I promised 3 weeks ago that I would put on Facebook Live page, and I forgot. So guys, here's the truth. Sometimes I screw up. Actually, often I mess up. And Stephen, I forgot to post that tracker. So I'm writing it down for, I think, the 4th time on Free Advice Friday page. And I will do my best. I'm not going to say I promise, but I do. I promise this, the 4th time's the charm. I will get it up this week. I promise. So thank you for that question. That is a very valid, we have an anonymous question. And guys, for those of you who want to log in and ask questions anonymously, that is absolutely allowed. I would ask you to go to newshelves.com/FAF for Free Advice Friday, newshelves.com/FAF. I also have, if you can't figure or remember that one out, you can also go to amysadvice.com. It'll take you to the same page, amysadvice.com. You go to either of those websites and you can sign up to join us here live. You do not need to give us your real name. You don't even have to give us your name. You can just say anonymous, and you can ask me all the questions you want every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. I, again, for those of you who came in late, would like to thank Alexa Bigwarfe for joining me. Alexa, we usually wrap up around 10:30, but we still have quite a few questions. Do you have a few more minutes?
I'm good. I love this. Let's keep going.
Alexa, our anonymous attendee is saying, how do you develop a mental toughness to avoid feeling overwhelmed? And I'm guessing discouraged. From what I can see in this question, I'm guessing there's some discouragement with all there is to do with marketing. And in addition, when you promote a book, you get rejected by stores, libraries, bloggers, the media. Do you have a trick that you do for mental toughness or to combat feeling overwhelmed or discouraged?
Yes, it's called practice. just do it and do it and do it, and eventually you'll get used to hearing no's. Now, I developed this mental toughness through years and years of fundraising efforts. So you learn really quickly, and selling like other products that I won't mention today, you learn how to deal with no's. But no, it is very overwhelming. And it's funny because we just had this conversation with a group of writers that I'm working with the other day. We went through all the things that they should be doing to prepare for their book launch. And I could see like the sweat pouring down their faces as they're just like, how am I work a full-time job. I have 3 small kids. How am I ever going to do this? And I often refer to a comment. I used to be an intelligence officer in the Air Force, and we were super overwhelmed with 2 wars happening and all this stuff. And I remember going into my commander's office one day and saying, how are we ever going to do all of this stuff? You know, and she looked at me and she said, I'm going to tell you my favorite expression. How do you eat an elephant? And I was like, why on earth are we talking about elephants? And she was like, 1 bite at a time. So my suggestion is to sit down, to set some goals and timelines for what you're trying to achieve, to map out some sort of a plan. If it's growing your email list, spend an hour a week doing the things to grow your email list. If it's, whatever it is, you have to mark out time on your calendar. You have to make it your job to market your book. And the rejection part takes a little bit more, like it always hurts. It hurts every time somebody says they don't like the way I wrote a sentence, but you just have to get used to it and remember that Dr. Seuss was rejected like 83 times before he finally got in there. Stephen King had like a nail filled with like thousands of rejections on his, and look where he is now. So it happens to the best, right?
I have an author who's on the chat who has signed up to join us every week, and she's on most weeks. She and her husband run a wonderful small publishing company, Rick Lenz, and her answer is she drinks. Apparently they drink copiously.
That too.
All right, so I'd like to, way to go.
That too.
That is some great advice. There's 2 different things. There's overwhelmed with all you have to do, and then there's feeling disappointed or overwhelmed by rejection. The rejection part is this. I've made a life as a salesperson. I sell and I market for a living, but it does not come naturally to me. I am not naturally a thick-skinned person. I am not a pushy person by nature. I'm very New England, very, you know, just kind of keep it low in the grass. That is who I am naturally, but I have learned to pretend to be someone else when I need to. I get nervous, guys. My palms are sweating right now. My hands shake when I speak in public, yet I speak in public every week. And every month I'm on stages. So doing stuff anyway is exactly what Alexa said. It comes from practice. The third or fourth time you do something that terrifies you, it will no longer terrify you. And the other thing, though, there's no amount of practice that's going to get you over feeling discouraged or rejected when you're actually being discouraged and rejected. There's no getting around that. But this is how I combat it. I drive a Ford. I drive a Mustang Ford. I drive a Mustang because I'm having a midlife crisis at the moment. It's bright red. It's gorgeous. Someday I'll post a picture. But I have a bright red Mustang. I bought it used. It, you know, cost a certain amount. But it's not a very expensive or fancy car. Now, down the street from the Ford dealership, there's a Mercedes dealership, and there's a Lexus dealership. My father drove a Jaguar. My father had a Jaguar convertible for years, and I loved that car. Here's the thing. A Jaguar is not a great fit for me. It doesn't fit my budget. It doesn't fit my lifestyle. I'm not going to hand wash my car to keep the coating clean without swirls. I'm not a Jaguar girl. I would love to drive a Mercedes. I can't afford it. I don't have $50,000 to spend on a car. Do you, Alexa?
No.
No. But the Mercedes dealership, when they see me drive by with my Mustang, is not sitting there all dejected saying, she didn't buy a Mercedes. They're not constantly sending me emails asking me to buy a Mercedes. They offered me a Mercedes once. I test drove it. I couldn't afford it. I said, no, thank you. They moved on. And that is what I do. My services, my books, my writing, my blog, my webcasts, my Free Advice Fridays, they're a great fit for some people. They are not a great fit for others. My style and the way I do things would absolutely not work for somebody. But it works for Denise and Janice, apparently, because they keep coming back. Bless their hearts. So just know that your writing, your words, your wisdom, your stories, your advice is only good and should only be for a certain percentage of the people out there. And there is no problem. If you are told no by a blogger or an editor or an agent or a bookstore or a library, they're not saying that you stink. They're not saying you're bad. They're saying you're not a good fit for their needs. A Mustang is a wonderful car and it fits me perfectly. A Jaguar is also a wonderful car. I said, no, thank you. I didn't want a Jaguar. So when you get rejected, consider yourself that you are at a Mercedes type level and you were not a good fit for them, and move on to somebody who does want a Mercedes. That's who you are. I don't know, anonymous, because you're anonymous, if you're Mercedes level or if you're Mustang level, but there are people out there who are going to want your writing. Keep going.
That is some of the best advice I have ever heard.
Okay, you got to stop. My head is going to be too big. I'm not going to be able to hold it up for the rest of this.
It's great advice. Great advice.
Lynn apparently had her Kindle book hacked, and it's all over Google as a PDF. Lynn, I'm so sorry that happened to you, because it's very much like someone took a feather pillow and ripped it open, and the feathers are all over the neighborhood. You're never going to be able to get them all back. So getting your Kindle book to do well when it's for free as a PDF all over the internet is a huge hurdle for you to overcome. At first blush, knowing what I know about you and your books, I would recommend writing another book. Write another book. I know your advice. I know your stuff. You can even duplicate a lot of the content from your first book in your second book, but I would write another book with a slightly different focus and start fresh. We're all writers, guys. My first book was great for what it was. It didn't do wonderfully. Well, my first book actually sold 30,000 copies, but I mean, my first self-published book. It is what it is. It's a great book, but it never took off. And I'm a marketer for a living. So you know what I did? I wrote a second book, and now I'm writing a third book. Lynn, I don't mean to be flip, but if your ebook was hacked and it's all over Google free as a PDF, I would suggest you move on and you write your next book, and not try and pull those feathers back into the pillow. Alexa, thoughts?
This is one of those issues that's really frustrating, the piracy of books, because I've found many of my books out there on other websites too. So I did a little bit of research on this a few years ago, and there's really not much that can be done, unfortunately. So it's very frustrating. It's really, really annoying. I don't know how much yours is available on there, but I think the other thing, I totally agree with writing another book and with repurposing content. And then the other advice I have is that you should really work on building your email list and your audience, and make sure that those people that are in contact with you and are following you because they love you and want you, make sure you are including the link to your book in your bio, and the link to your book in your email signature, and the link to your book periodically in your email, and things like that, so that the people who are already in front of you are getting the link to your book, and they're not going to Google it where they find the free copy. Hopefully, I don't know if that will completely fix it for you, but I also agree with with writing more books. It'll help.
Right. Well, it looks like we have 2 more questions. Alexa Bigwarfe, do you want to tell people what website, if they need to, because I'd love for people to get a hold of you if they've got questions about publishing in the future.
Absolutely. So you can find me at writepublishsell.co. There's no M on the end of that. That's one place where we try to put out regular content about, advice for authors, mostly geared towards the self-publishing and indie publishing stuff. And then we also have the womeninpublishingsummit.com, which is a phenomenal resource. It's a week long of people like Amy coming out and sharing everything they know for a whole week free online. And yeah, we love to try and share as much great resources as we can.
Great. Well, thank you so much. We do have 2 more questions we are going to answer, and then we will see you next Friday here on Free Advice Friday. I want to remind everyone who's watching this on a replay, whether you're on my YouTube channel or on my website, that amysadvice.com is a great place to go to sign up, to join us live every Friday, and to get emails with the actual replay link. That way you don't even have to look for us or find us. It just happens automatically. We do a lot of interaction, as you can see. I answer a lot of questions. What I didn't do, and I need to look real quick, there were 2 questions that were emailed me. And I am so sorry. So there's actually, but one of the questions I want to ask, Sonia's asking, Alexa, do you have any experience with Selfie? Are you familiar with Selfie?
I've never even heard of it before.
Okay. Sonia, Selfie is in partnership with Library Journal. It is a program where actually you give your ebook, in essence, to the libraries. And raising awareness for your book by putting it into the Self-E program is a great idea if you're looking for exposure and to increase your visibility. It's a vetted program. It's in conjunction with a number of organizations, that, including Ingram, that I absolutely support. But you have to find out what your goals are, because once you put it in Selfie for libraries, that's it. I mean, you're then not going to be able to 3 months from now sell your ebook to libraries. So getting Solve the Divorce Dilemma in through the Selfie program is a great idea if you have another book you're working on, because that is a fantastic idea. But if Solve the Divorce Dilemma is if it's your one cannonball, if it's the only bullet you're going to fire, then it's probably not a great idea. So that's my advice for that. Lois emailed yesterday that her book is only available on Ingram Spark as a hardcover, and she wants to know what she has to do to get a paperback edition available for independent bookstores. Simple question, Lois. You've already got the interior set up in the hardcover that can be duplicated for the paperback. Go to Bowker. Hopefully you bought 10 ISBNs minimum, maybe even 100. I don't know how many you bought. But go to Bowker through myidentifiers.com, grab the next ISBN on your list, and if you're going to start publishing more than one edition of a book, an ebook, an audiobook, you need a number of ISBNs. So go get a group if you didn't. Grab the next ISBN in your list. Go to either a designer or there's a lot of template companies out there you can use, but get your paperback cover designed. If you have a hardcover designed already, go back to your designer who did the hardcover and ask them for, tell them your page count and the color paper you want, and they'll design your spine and they'll design the paperback for you. And you upload the paperback version with a new ISBN to Ingram Spark, just like you did the hardcover. Easy peasy, super easy. If your paperback is available right now through KDP, which used to be called CreateSpace, and you own that ISBN and you chose expanded distribution or you didn't, just check with KDP to make sure that it's not in their Ingram Spark account, because believe it or not, KDP actually uses Lightning Source Ingram Spark for a lot of their print on demand to the bookstores. When they say expanded distribution, that's all they're talking about. I actually have a blog about this. If you go to newshelves.com/blog and search on the phrase Ingram Spark, you will see an article that says why you need Ingram Spark and KDP at the same time. So that's my advice for that. All right. Ray has asked for, Ray from Germany wants to know how I got traction for Free Advice Friday and how can she start offering free live story framing sessions if she doesn't have a mailing list. Well, I didn't either. Ray, a couple of years ago, no one had any idea who I was. And it's important with your blog and with your videos and this gets turned into a podcast every week. It's available on Apple and everywhere. And I get hundreds of views on YouTube and I get thousands of downloads from my podcast. But a few years ago, nobody had I knew I was brilliant, but I was the only one. Nobody else thought I was brilliant. And so what you do is you start singing to nobody, sing to an empty audience. Put out your video every week, start posting it on YouTube, put out your podcast, create the content, create it every week, even if you're sitting in an empty stadium, because eventually the guy sweeping the hall is going to hear you and come in and sit down. And then he's going to text a friend of his and his friend's going to come join him. And within a couple of weeks or a couple of months, there'll be 11 people in the audience and then 100. And then if you're lucky, and I was very lucky, please do not underestimate the joy of luck. But I was lucky. Eventually it becomes thousands of people who reach out and listen to you every week. But it starts by creating the content. And don't worry about gaining traction. First, you need the content. Alexa, thoughts?
Ditto. I mean, I did the same thing. I have slowed down on my lives on my Facebook page. Well, stopped would be the appropriate term because I just got overwhelmed with some other things happening. But yeah, every Friday, I used to do them on Fridays too. I'd show up and I'd just, I'd answer questions that were asked of me in my group. So also forming a group and having a Facebook group where people can go and ask questions. And for that, when you go, I get the question a lot of how did you build this engagement in your group? And it's the same thing. Like I just had prompts that I posted every single day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And for a long time, nobody answered. And then all of a sudden somebody came in and started answering. And when somebody else saw an answer, they answered too. And now we have great traction in the Write Publish Sell Facebook group and people are asking questions and supporting each other and helping each other. But it's that consistency and time. Don't give up if it doesn't happen immediately. We're it has to happen now society, but It really takes time.
And please make sure that you reach out to other people in your area and see if you can get on their podcast.
Yes.
See if you can, Alexa, I've known her for a year now. I'm a huge fan of her advice. And I asked her to come on Free Advice Friday. I wasn't expecting she'd say yes. She has a much bigger platform than I do. But, her success, and here she is giving us what is almost an hour of her very valuable time to answer these questions. Just ask other people. It doesn't hurt to ask, and and partner up with people that you admire. A rising tide raises all boats.
Oh, and amen.
With that, Alexa Bigwarfe, I want to thank you for joining me on Free Advice Friday. WritePublishSell.co. That is where to reach her. If you have questions about publishing. Now, Wendy I asked a question last week that I thought I answered properly, but Wendy has a number of, there's a woman on who's here every week I adore, and Wendy has some questions. She's got a book out where she used a lot of quotes from other people as chapter headers in her book, and she was asking about copyright issues. I don't know that stuff. But Alexa might. So for those of you who have questions, may I recommend that you go to writepublishsell.co. When it comes to copyright and publishing, she's a great one to ask. When it comes to marketing, you can come back to me.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
Alexa, is there anything you've got going on you want to tell people before we close up today?
Yes, thank you for asking. Actually, I do want to invite anyone who is, I know this is a more mature group of people, but maybe you've only published one book or maybe you're still in the process. I am running a self-publishing boot camp where we are going to be talking all about and why I say this is not just for beginners. It's because sometimes you do your first book and you realize you don't know all the things you needed to have known. And as a publisher, as someone who spends a lot of time investing my energies into how books are done well and properly and look just like something that a big publisher would put out, you know, this is my jam. So we are doing the self-publishing boot camp the 5th of August is when it starts. You can find out information on the rightpublishsell.co. I'm limiting it to 6 people because I really want to be able to deep dive with people into how they are getting their book prepared, making sure everything is good to go, and setting up for their launch as well. And then I'll send them to you for all the what happens after the launch.
Well, guys, again, Free Advice Friday is sponsored by Bestseller Builders. And if you go to bestsellervideo.com, you can see an entire free hour that I've put together for you on how to promote and market your book, how to gain a platform. Rightpublishsell.co. My guest this week was Alexa Bigwarfe. Thank you, Alexa, for joining me. And guys, we will be back here next Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. Please go to amysadvice.com to sign up to join us live if you've not and ask your questions. And I look forward to seeing you every week on Free Advice Friday.